So one thing I get asked quite a lot is, what is the best way to learn tones in a tonal language? Or sometimes I hear things like, I would love to learn Chinese, but I just don't think I could deal with the tones. Hey guys, it's Luke here, and I taught myself both Mandarin and Cantonese Chinese, and tones is a big part of that. So today what I wanted to do was go over what the best way is, I think, in my experience, to tackle tones in a tonal language. So quickly then, what is a tone? So a tone in linguistics is when the variation in a pitch of the word is used to cause a change in the meaning. So let's take an example and try to do it with an English word. So if we take, for example, the word bat, it could either be bat as in the animal or bat as in a baseball bat. So now let's say, for hypothetical reasons, there's tones in English and we wanted to distinguish between these two things. Maybe on one, for the animal, you do a rising tone, so it can be bat, and then for the baseball bat, you might just do a high tone, so bat. So then in that context, in this version of English, whether it's bat or bat, then that would change the meaning. So it's all about words with the same sound, but then a change in pitch causes a change in meaning to the word. Now, we do have various tones and change of pitches in English, but this tends to be more for changing the general feeling of the word or the sentence. For example, sometimes if you add a rising pitch in English, that refers to a question. So for example, he did it, or he did it. So when you rise at the end, it's kind of implied that it's a question. So we do have tones in English, but they tend to mean different things. So it might not be as hard as you think. So now, what about Mandarin Chinese? So in Mandarin, there are 4 tones. There's a high flat tone, a rising tone, a dipping tone or the third tone, and the 4th tone, which goes down. And after that, there's also one neutral tone. So let me try and demonstrate with the sound sh, teacher, sh, time, sh, history, sh, to be, sh, and spoon, sh. So there's 5 tones of Mandarin Chinese. So the same sound sh with different tones actually means different things. And if you want to see a good example of this, there's actually the famous poem in Chinese written only with the sound sh.
诗是时诗史，时是诗是诗是，是是是时时诗。
And what I'll do is I'll leave a link to that in the description below if anyone's interested. So tones are definitely intimidating to learners, and I totally understand. Before I got started, I didn't even know what a tone was. It seemed completely overwhelming, but trust me, it does get better over time. So here are 4 steps to help me learn the tones of Mandarin Chinese. So the first one, learn basic tone rules and practice tone pairs. So this gives you an idea of what the tones are in that language. So for example, the basic tone rules in Mandarin, there's the one around the character bu, there's also the character yi, and then there's the rules around the 3rd tone that I recommend you learning, and you can find plenty of videos on YouTube about that. So then you want to practice and listening and then maybe producing tone pairs. So what is a tone pair? Most words in Mandarin are 2 characters long, which means most of the time you're saying tones in terms of pairs. So for example, if you wanted to say the 1st tone with the 3rd tone, then an example of that is the Mandarin word to start, 开始, 开始, and then you can practice that. So 开始, 开始, and you can listen to see what it sounds like and how they fit to each other. Because sometimes people ask me, oh, but I have a naturally deep voice, so does that mean I can't do the high tone in Mandarin? Well, no, it doesn't work like that, because they're relative to the other pitches that you make. So if you have a naturally deep voice, then your high tone wouldn't be as high as someone who has a naturally higher voice. So it's all relative, which is why practicing tone pairs, listening and reproducing them can give you a much better feeling of what the tones actually are used like in everyday conversation. And then this is going to help you a lot to pick out tones, when you're listening, and also to help reproduce them accurately as well. So step number 2, and this leads on to what I just said after practicing tone pairs, is you want to focus on listening a lot and practice picking out the tones as part of everyday speech. So just listen and think. This is very easy to get a feedback loop set up when you're listening and you hear a word you don't know. Think, what tone was that? Maybe rewind and listen again. Say you think that was 1st tone. Get a pop-up dictionary, check what the tone is, and then, okay, that was what I thought it was, or no, it wasn't. And then you can kind of get that feedback model going. So listen, think what the tone is, check your answer, and then you can practice and just keep on when you're listening to stuff, when you're watching TV, just practice and keep listening out for the tone and trying to train your ear to pick them up and incorporating that feedback loop to make sure you test yourself and make sure you know whether you're getting it right or not. And over time, you're going to slowly be able to hear them more and more clearly. Step number 3, when you're reading, make sure when you don't know the tone of a character and you're sub-vocalizing something, something, make sure you actually look up when you're looking up the pronunciation of a character, also look up the tone meaning and don't just guess. So some people would say, oh, I roughly know what that means, I don't have to look up the tone. But then if you do that over a long period of time when you're reading a lot, then what's going to happen is you're just going to start making up the tones because you don't actually know what they are. If when you're reading, you look up the tone, you're going to have an idea of what they are in your head. And then when you're speaking, you can kind of say that as well. Now, this is only a small part of it. It is way more important to focus more on listening, which was in part 2, but I just want to make the point that when you're reading, if you don't know the pronunciation of something, you don't know the tone of something, don't forget to look it up and check, and this can help over time to kind of build that mental model that you have. So step 4 is practice speaking. So when you're speaking and after you've spent a long time on input and you've acquired it and you have kind of like that mental model in your head of how the tones work, and trust me, building up the mental model can take a very long time, but once it's there and you start speaking, you can start shadowing with native material, you can start chorusing with native material, which is basically just listening and trying to mimic it back and then comparing the sounds that you make to the sounds that you hear. Now, that's going to help you identify where you differ from native speakers. And the other thing is, when you start speaking, you can also start speaking with a tutor or something on italki, and then when you're practicing, they can help correct your tone mistakes. So that's it. That's my video on what I think are some useful things to be doing in terms of learning tones with Mandarin Chinese. Let me know what you personally struggle with and what's helped you, and I will see you guys in the next video.